I know this sounds small, but it started with a glass of water. Not a fight, not a kiss, not even a suspicious text. Just a glass of water that I asked for and never got. It was late. I was lying on the couch after spending 11 straight hours at the shop. My back felt like someone had tied bricks to it. My hands were blackened from a stubborn engine detail. I remember I asked her very softly, "Bree, could you bring me some water?" She looked at me from the kitchen, nodded, then never came back. She walked straight past me, giggling at her phone, closed the bedroom door, and that was it. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, too tired to stand. My tongue felt like paper. I waited for 10 minutes before getting up, walking past the bedroom, and hearing her voice, low and breathy, say, "No, he's asleep. He doesn't listen anyway. My name's Owen. I'm 41, married to Bree for 8 years. No kids. We tried briefly but gave up after 2 failed IVF rounds. Bree said she didn't want to force it. I said okay because I didn't want to lose her. Bree is magnetic. She's one of those people who fills a room the second she enters it. Blonde hair, designer glasses, and a sarcasm that borders on cruel, but somehow everyone loves it. She works in consumer marketing at a big cosmetics company in Philadelphia, and she's been working a lot lately. Late meetings, business trips, weekend strategy sessions with her innovation team. One name kept coming up more than I was comfortable with: Camden. Not a name you hear every day. Camden said I should wear red lipstick more often. Camden booked the hotel. He knows all the nice spots. Camden made the slideshow hilarious. He's so good at icebreakers. I used to smile when she said it. Just a name. Until one afternoon, I walked into her home office while she was on a video call and saw his name on the screen. Not in a work context, but a text notification that said, "Still thinking about that moment in the elevator. That look you gave me." She quickly minimized it, acted like nothing happened. I didn't say anything. I felt frozen, like I just watched the ground crack under my feet but hadn't started falling yet. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was harmless flirting. Maybe he was just the type of guy who said things like that. Maybe I was overthinking it. But inside, I felt this slow drip of humiliation building. And I hated that I didn't have the guts to say anything. Until the charity gala. Her company hosted an annual event at a downtown hotel ballroom. She invited me. I wore a suit. She wore red lipstick, the very shade Camden had apparently suggested. She introduced me to him. Camden was tall, the kind of tall that's intentional. Tailored suit, polished shoes, a perfectly calculated 5 o'clock shadow. When she said, "This is my husband, Owen," Camden smiled and replied, "She talks about you a lot." Then he added with a wink, "She really admires loyalty." I should have walked away. I should have said something clever. Instead, I laughed awkwardly and went to the bar like a background character in my own marriage. But then things unraveled. Later that night, a drunk client made a rude comment about Bree's dress. Something like, "Your dress is doing overtime tonight." I stood up, not even aggressively, and told the guy to back off, but Bree stepped in. And she defended the client. "It was just a joke, Owen. Don't make it weird." I stared at her, then at Camden. He was smirking. No one else said anything. That's when I realized something I never wanted to believe. I wasn't with her anymore. I was just next to her. So I said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "You defend him but never me. Maybe next time Camden can buy you your next dress and call it a joke." Silence. She looked like she'd just been slapped. I walked out, but not dramatically. I just walked like I was finally done waiting for a glass of water that was never coming. And that was the night everything started to fall apart. I didn't go home that night. I didn't text her. I didn't even turn on my phone. I just drove. No music, no destination, just headlights slicing through dark roads I didn't recognize. I ended up at a 24-hour diner off Route 30. Ordered a cup of coffee I never drank. Just sat there trying to understand what had just happened, what had been happening, and what it meant. My mind kept looping back to that look on Camden's face, that arrogant, knowing smirk. It wasn't confidence. It was ownership. The way a man looks when he believes he's already won. And Bree, she didn't stop him. Didn't shut it down. She didn't even flinch. Around 4 a.m., I checked my phone. 11 missed calls. 2 texts, both from Bree. Bree, please come home. You embarrassed me. Bree, I don't want to talk while you're like this. While I'm like this. As if I'd done something wrong by defending her. As if her discomfort mattered more than my dignity. I didn't reply. I drove to my friend Elias's place instead. An old college buddy I hadn't seen in months. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a blanket, pointed at the couch and said, "Lock the door when you're in." The next morning, I told him everything. And when I said Camden's name, something in his face changed. He didn't say anything for a moment, just scratched his beard and looked down at the coffee table. Then he said, "You sure you want to hear this?" That's when he told me. A month ago, Elias had been at a rooftop bar downtown with some mutual acquaintances. Turns out, one of them worked at the same company as Bree, different department. And according to this guy, Bree and Camden had been acting like more than colleagues for a while. There was even a joke going around the office. People calling them BC, short for Bree and Camden, like some sick sitcom couple. I wanted to throw up. That nickname, that casual familiarity. People knew. People Bree never mentioned. People who laughed behind my back while I sat at home reheating leftovers and fixing our leaky sink. I asked Elias if he believed it. He just looked at me with the kind of face that says, "You already know." When I finally walked back into our apartment the following evening, Bree was sitting on the couch in leggings and an oversized hoodie, the one I bought her during a beach trip 2 years ago. Her hair was tied up, makeup-free, and she looked exhausted but not sorry, just cornered. She didn't jump up to hug me. She didn't cry or ask where I'd been. Instead, she sighed and said, "I knew you'd come back when you calmed down." I didn't sit down. I asked her one question. "Did anything ever happen between you and Camden?" There was a long silence, and I'll never forget what she said next. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The hours, the meetings. Camden's just someone who gets it. You don't." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even a denial. It was a justification. The way someone tries to make you feel like the problem for not being what they needed in secret. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just nodded. Then I walked into our bedroom and started taking photos of my belongings. Everything I owned that wasn't nailed down. Not to leave, not yet, but to keep a record. Because deep down, I knew where this was headed. And Bree was going to lie. I just didn't realize how much or how publicly. The next few days were surreal. Like walking through my own life with a delay. Watching everything happen 3 seconds too late. I'd go to grab my keys and realize they weren't where I left them. I'd pour coffee, then forget to drink it. Bree moved around the apartment like a ghost who wasn't sorry to be haunting me. She tried small talk, pretended nothing had shifted. She even asked if I wanted to check out that new documentary about deep-sea creatures one night. Like that would undo the moment she chose another man's side instead of mine. I played along. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted to see it. I needed to catch her, not just suspect her. That's when I started paying attention to her phone habits. She used to leave her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to shower. Now it never left her side. She kept its screen down, put it on airplane mode at night. When I asked why, she said, "Work's been nuts. I need to stay focused." One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. Her car was in the driveway. Strange. She had a team meeting scheduled until 6 o'clock. I walked inside quietly, expecting maybe she was napping or on a call, but I heard her laughing. Not her fake office laugh, her real one, the kind I hadn't heard in months. I followed the sound down the hall toward her office. The door was mostly closed but not latched. I leaned in, not proud of it, but let's not pretend pride was still part of this marriage. Her voice. "No, I told you, he still thinks it's about the hours. He has no clue. It's honestly kind of sad." Pause, then a male voice. His voice. Camden's voice. "So, does that mean I get the weekend again? Again? Again?" She laughed. "Don't push your luck." I didn't go in. I didn't burst through the door like some movie husband. I backed away. sat on the floor just outside the laundry room, and stared at the spinning dryer like it held answers. My chest felt tight, but not from rage. From something worse, recognition. The kind that crawls up from your stomach and whispers, "This is real. You were right all along. And it's so much uglier than you imagined." I waited until she ended the call. Then I knocked. She opened the door, startled. Her eyes darted to my face, then to my hands, like she wasn't sure if I'd heard. I asked calmly, "How's Camden?" Her face went blank. And in that silence, I saw everything. Every lie, every weekend trip, every lipstick she wore just for him. It was all there in her eyes. But she didn't confess. Not yet. She stepped back and said, "Owen, let's not do this now." Now, as if I had waited too long to matter. I nodded, turned away, and walked straight to the bedroom. Not to pack. Not yet. I opened our safe, the one we kept for emergencies, and took out a folder. Inside was every shared document we'd accumulated. Lease agreements, tax returns, medical records, vacation itineraries, but most importantly, our joint bank account information. That night, while she slept soundly on the far edge of our bed, I lay awake thinking about how many people knew before I did. How many rooms I'd walked into that fell silent the moment I left. How I had defended her, supported her, adored her while she planned escapes in hotel elevators. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a husband. I felt like a placeholder, a name on paper, a man waiting for someone else's relationship to become official. The next Saturday morning, Bree had her gym bag packed before I even opened my eyes. She said she was going to a wellness retreat with her department's female leads. Something about team building, breath work, and disconnecting from distraction. She mentioned it like it was routine, something she'd told me before, but she hadn't. She never had. That alone was a red flag. And then came the kicker. She said she'd be gone 2 nights. I asked where. She said Lake Halloway. That was odd. I'd worked a detailing job up there last year. It wasn't a spa location. It was mostly cabins and boat launches, some weekend fishermen, and a gas station that served questionable chicken tenders. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, got out of bed, and offered to carry her bag to the car. She looked surprised, cautious, like kindness from me suddenly made her suspicious. After she left, I called Elias, told him everything. He didn't hesitate. "Let's take a drive," he said. By noon, we were parked 2 streets away from a rustic cabin Airbnb just off the lake. Elias had pulled it up through one of his cousin's rental listings. We waited. I didn't know what I was expecting. A glimpse, a car, a shadow. But when Camden stepped out onto the porch with his phone in one hand and a coffee mug in the other, wearing sweatpants and no shirt, I swear my vision blurred. And then she came out after him, laughing, wearing a blue sweater I hadn't seen in months, one I thought she'd donated. She was barefoot. She touched his back like it was second nature. And then they kissed. Not secretly, not nervously, just openly. Like they were already living the life I hadn't realized she'd planned. I didn't move. I didn't yell. Elias reached for my shoulder, but I couldn't feel it. I felt like someone had hollowed me out. After a few minutes, I tapped his hand and said, "Let's go." I didn't want to be there anymore. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I had seen everything I needed to. On the drive back, Elias asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know. What I felt wasn't sadness. Not yet. It was more like something sacred had finally shattered, but the pieces weren't done falling. That evening, I went home and sat in the kitchen. Not to eat, just to be somewhere that didn't feel like our bedroom or our couch or the place where we used to laugh. I opened her laptop. I knew her password. She never changed it. What I found made my hands go cold. She'd been booking rentals for months. Little cabins, boutique hotels. Emails titled "Conference Confirmation" or "Strategy Weekend" were actually reservations for 2 guests. One file was a scanned waiver from a mountain ziplining company. The release form listed both their names. She had erased me from her weekends and replaced me with a fantasy. And what scared me most wasn't that she was cheating. It was that she had gotten so good at it. The level of planning, of duplicity. It wasn't spontaneous. It was a lifestyle. I logged out, closed the screen, and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I didn't recognize the man looking back. At 9:44 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Bree. Bree, hope your weekend's relaxing. Love you. I didn't respond. But in that moment, I finally made a choice. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to do what she expected. Wait and keep playing husband. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing something that would change everything. An email to Camden's HR department. Because if Bree could burn our marriage down in silence, I could set off alarms in places she thought were safe. I rewrote that email 4 times. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want rage. I wanted facts. Calm, well-structured, airtight. I wanted whoever read it to see the truth without needing to read between the lines. I didn't name-call. I didn't speculate. I just attached the reservation confirmations I found on her laptop, screenshots of the cabin Airbnb listing that matched her weekend retreat, and the photo of Camden on that porch. I knew HR departments don't act on whispers. They act on liability. So I added the part about how Camden was a senior director and Bree was technically under his division, even if not directly. That alone, in most companies, is a no-go. I hit send. Then I stared at the screen for a long time. No fireworks went off. No dramatic music. Just silence. That's what surprised me most about all of this. How quiet it felt. Like betrayal didn't need an audience to be real. Like I was watching my life fall apart on mute. The next day, Bree came home smiling like someone who got away with it. She even brought me a coffee, vanilla, 2 creams. Like she remembered who I was. She kissed me on the cheek. I stood still the whole time. I didn't return it. She didn't notice. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. That night, she asked if I wanted to order in and watch something. I said I was tired. Went to bed early. Locked the bedroom door. I could hear her pacing on the other side, typing something on her phone. I didn't care anymore. My brain had already moved past the phase where I craved explanations. I wasn't interested in hearing her cry or justify or spin it into a story where I wasn't enough. I knew I was enough. The next morning, she was already gone by the time I woke up. She'd left a note by the coffee maker. Had to go in early. Big Monday. Love you. The irony made my stomach turn. But around 11 a.m., I got a message. A blocked number, no name, just a short voicemail. Played it. It was Camden. His voice wasn't charming this time. It was frantic, sharp, clipped with anger. Hey, I don't know what you're playing at, but this is between us. You crossed a line. I suggest you stop before things escalate. He ended it there. He didn't say, I didn't do anything. He didn't deny it. Just threatened in the most corporate, spineless tone I'd ever heard. I forwarded the voicemail to the same HR email thread. 5 hours later, Bree came home like a hurricane. She slammed the door, dropped her purse hard enough to rattle the keys off the counter. I was sitting at the kitchen table, completely calm. She stood in front of me and said, What did you do? I looked up slowly. I told the truth. Her eyes flared. You just ruined everything. You don't even know what kind of position you've put me in. No, I said, keeping my voice low. You did that. She stood there, stunned, like she didn't know what to do without control of the narrative. And for the first time in our marriage, I saw her not as the woman I married, but as the woman she became when I wasn't looking. Someone who could lie with ease, smile while cheating, and still expect affection like it was owed. She walked to the bedroom and slammed the door. I didn't follow. I stayed right where I was, still and steady, like a man finally stepping out from the shadow of his own silence. The next morning, Camden was placed on leave. By Wednesday, Bree was temporarily reassigned, and by Friday she stopped coming home at all. No note, no bag, no goodbye, just gone. But she wasn't done, because what she did next to regain control, to twist the truth, wasn't just manipulative. It was public, and it nearly cost me my business, my name, and everything I had left. The first sign came in the form of a Google review. It was a Friday morning. I had just finished detailing a Lexus for a new client and was grabbing a sandwich behind the garage. I pulled out my phone to check appointments and saw the notification. New review left on Owen's Auto Detail. I tapped it without thinking. 1 star. No comment. Just the username, Brie's Truth. I stared at it, thinking maybe it was a mistake, a coincidence. But then I checked my inbox. 2 missed messages from regular clients, both asking if I was doing okay. One asked if it was true what people were saying. I had no idea what that meant, so I searched. That's when I found it. Brie had gone online, but not to admit what happened, not to confess the affair or own up to the choices she made. She'd spun it into something entirely different. According to her social media post, which had already been reshared by a few of her coworkers, I was the controlling, emotionally neglectful husband who had harassed her colleague and tried to ruin his career out of bitterness. She didn't say my name, but it didn't matter. People knew. People guessed. One comment even said, "That must be Owen. I always got weird vibes from him at the gala." Weird vibes from me. I sat there with my sandwich untouched and my hand shaking. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't even insulted her. I had just reported what was already happening with proof. And now I was the villain in a story that didn't belong to me anymore. That same afternoon, a man in a pressed shirt and clipboard came into my garage. He introduced himself as an independent brand consultant. Said he was helping companies investigate reputational risk. Apparently, one of Brie's friends had sent a formal concern to the city's Chamber of Commerce, suggesting my business was unstable and hostile to women. I laughed when he said it, not because it was funny, but because it was the most absurd sentence I'd ever heard about myself. But he wasn't laughing. He handed me a form and said, "We're just doing our due diligence. If nothing's wrong, you've got nothing to worry about." Nothing to worry about. Took me 10 years to build this place from the ground up. I named it after my dad, Owen's Auto Detail, even though he'd passed away before seeing a single car drive in. I put everything I had into that concrete and tin building, and now it was being questioned because my wife didn't want the truth traced back to her. I called Elias. He came by immediately, helped me draft a formal statement. We posted on the business website, clarified the falsehoods, and locked down all social pages. That night, I went home and found Brie standing in the living room, not crying, not remorseful. She was just smug. "I warned you," she said, crossing her arms. "I told you not to escalate. You told me not to tell the truth," I corrected. "And now your mad people found out." She walked up to me, eyes locked. "Do you honestly think anyone's going to take your side? You run a garage. He runs a department. People believe who they want to believe." It was cruel, but it was honest. And it told me everything I needed to know. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I walked past her, grabbed a manila folder from the bookshelf, and handed it to her. Inside were 2 printed documents. One was a signed statement from the Airbnb owner confirming 2 guests under her name. Not for a team retreat, but a personal stay. The other, a cease and desist letter drafted by Elias's lawyer, outlining the defamation tied to her online claims. Brie's face changed, and for the first time since all this began, I saw a flicker of doubt in her. Not fear, not regret, just the slow realization that she'd underestimated how much I was willing to lose and how much I had already lost. She didn't take the folder, just left it on the counter. The next morning, she was gone again. But this time, so were her things. The closet was half empty. Her side of the bathroom counter cleared. The jewelry tray, the perfumes, the drawer where she kept her eye masks and expensive serums. All of it wiped clean like it had never existed. But she didn't disappear without leaving behind one last surprise. There on the kitchen table was a thin envelope. Inside, a letter from her attorney. She was filing for separation. On paper, she'd left me. But the truth was, she'd been gone long before. The separation papers weren't a surprise. What stunned me was how cleanly she'd prepared them. How far in advance they must have been printed, folded, and sealed, as if she'd been waiting for the moment I pushed back so she could hit send on her exit strategy. It didn't even feel like a reaction anymore. It felt like a script she was finally allowed to follow. I didn't sign them, not because I wanted her back, that part of me was dead, but because something about her timing didn't add up. She wasn't just trying to leave. She was trying to leave right now, when she had the upper hand in the story. And that meant one thing. She was hiding something worse than what I'd already found. So I went looking. I started with her tablet, something she often left behind because she assumed I never touched it. She was right until now. She had deleted most of her messages. But she forgot one thing. Bree was addicted to voice memos. Little notes to herself, task lists, ideas, even reminders for meetings. I scrolled through them quietly, not knowing what I was looking for until I hit one dated 5 weeks before the gala. Played it. What I heard changed everything. Camden said if I go public, he's going to deny it. Of course he is. He's got too much to lose. But if I wait until after the March conference, I can use the Vegas trip as leverage. Either way, I'm not going to be the one left behind if things explode. I'm smarter than that. Her voice was steady, almost smug. Like this was a chess match and she already knew how many pieces were left. There it was. Her plan, in her own words. She wasn't just cheating. She was strategizing, positioning herself to survive fallout if Camden got cold feet. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about me. It was about leverage, optics, and exit doors. I sent the audio to Elias. He replied within seconds, "Holy S. This changes everything." We called his contact a risk compliance attorney who specialized in workplace cases. She said if Bree was leveraging a personal relationship to gain professional benefits or influence internal promotions, and if that audio was real, there could be serious consequences for both of them. But I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing truth. The next day, I got a call from Camden's HR department. Not an email, a real call. A man with a quiet, serious voice thanked me for my continued transparency and asked if I could verify the authenticity of what I had sent. I told them I'd be happy to meet in person. That meeting happened the following Monday. I dressed simply. No tie, no anger, just a man with facts. They listened. They took notes. They asked no personal questions, only procedural ones. I showed them the voice memo, explained how I found it, and offered to give them full access to her original files. I told them I didn't want anything. No lawsuit, no drama, just acknowledgement that I wasn't who she said I was. They didn't confirm what they'd do next, but I saw it in their eyes. Something had shifted. That same evening, Bree showed up at the apartment. Not Camden, not a lawyer. Bree. She looked pale, unwashed, hair pulled back in a messy knot, the kind she usually redid 3 times before leaving the bathroom. Her eyes darted to mine, then around the apartment like she didn't recognize it anymore. She didn't speak at first, just stood there. Then she said, "You went too far." I asked, "Too far? How?" Her jaw clenched. "They've opened a formal investigation. He's under review. I'm being questioned by ethics compliance. This isn't just about us anymore." I nodded. Then I asked her a question I'd been avoiding for weeks. "Did you ever love me? Or was I just insurance?" She blinked fast. Then again. She didn't cry. Bree never cried when it mattered. She just whispered, "You were safe." That was it. I don't know why, but hearing those words finally unhooked something from my chest. Not pain, not betrayal, just confirmation. I had always loved her like she was home. But to her, I was a spare key, quiet, reliable, invisible unless needed. She didn't stay long, didn't ask for anything, just turned around and walked out with nothing but her phone in her hand and an apology stuck somewhere behind her silence. That night, I got an email from HR. Camden had been placed on indefinite leave pending review. And Bree? She was formally suspended with the option to resign before the next hearing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post anything. I didn't call anyone to say, "I told you so." I just sat on the edge of the bed and let the quiet fill the space she used to occupy with noise and secrets. But I wasn't alone. Because the next morning, a name popped up in my inbox. Someone I hadn't heard from in 5 years. Someone who knew Bree before me. And what she told me next flipped the entire story on its head. The email was short, just a subject line and 2 sentences. Subject: "You don't know me, but I knew her first. Message: if this is Owen, I think we need to talk. I dated Bree before she met you. I think she does this more often than you know. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I saw the name. Sloane Hartley. I remember Bree mentioning her once, years ago, in a story about grad school internships. Bree had said, "We were close, but it got messy." That was all I knew. I hesitated before replying, but something told me not to ignore it. So I emailed back, "I'm Owen. I don't know what you mean, but I'm listening." Sloane responded immediately. She lived one state over and said she was in town visiting family. Asked if I wanted to grab coffee the next day. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity, not hope. We met at a quiet cafe near the park. She wore a soft gray coat, black boots, and no makeup. Her hair was pulled back like she didn't care about impressing anyone, and her eyes were kind. When I introduced myself, she didn't smile right away. She just looked at me like she already knew the kind of man I was. Over the next hour, she told me everything. Bree had cheated on her, too. Had lied, manipulated, and vanished when someone better came along. Sloane had found out the hard way, through a friend who accidentally forwarded her an email meant for Bree's next girlfriend. "It took me 2 years to stop thinking it was my fault," Sloane said. "She's charming. She's clever. But she doesn't love people. She uses them." I nodded. "That sounds right." She paused, then asked, "So what happens now? You burn the rest of her world down?" I shook my head. "No, that's what she expects. I'm not playing her game anymore." We talked for another 2 hours. Not about Bree. About work, books, music, family, the little things you forget you love when you're constantly spinning in someone else's orbit. Felt easy. Not flirty, not fast, just easy, like breathing for the first time in months. As we stood to leave, Sloane hesitated and said, "You don't owe me anything. I just thought you deserved the truth from someone who's lived it." I smiled genuinely. That might be the kindest thing anyone's done for me in years. We didn't make plans. We didn't exchange numbers. But I knew I'd see her again, and I was okay not knowing when. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't desperate for control. I was just present. In the weeks that followed, Bree resigned from her job. No apology, no statement, just a quiet vanishing act. Camden's status remained under review, though a little digging told me he wouldn't be returning. As for me, the smear campaign against my business lost steam quickly once the truth came out. Clients returned. Some even brought flowers. One woman, Mrs. Garland, left a card that read, "We never believed her. Stay strong, kid." I repainted the shop, rebranded the logo, updated the website. For the first time in years, it felt like mine again. Not something I was defending, but something I was building. And then one Saturday, as I was locking up for the night, a familiar voice called out across the lot, "I hear your wax job still beats most dealerships." I turned. Sloane stood there, smiling gently. "Thought I'd stop by," she said. "I was in the neighborhood." She wasn't, but I didn't call her out on it. Instead, I unlocked the door, flipped the sign back to open, and said, "Want the tour?" She stepped inside like she belonged. And for once, it didn't feel like the beginning of another story about betrayal. It felt like the end of one, and the quiet start of something new.